So you have a couple of your buddies coming over tonight for the game. How you feeling this year about your bracket? When you head to Walmart to pick up Coca-Cola 6-packs and Powerade 8-packs for tonight's tip-off, you have to check out this site with NCAA March Madness tips, Coke.com/alwaysready. It's full of fun stats and tips that you usually don't think about when you're filling out your bracket. So not only does Walmart have everything you need to be ready for the tip-off like Coca-Cola and Powerade, but if you head to Coke.com/alwaysready, they're helping you with your bracket as well.
Here we are, and there they go. The Golden State Warriors, what a couple of huge wins. Back-to-back nights, they win at Houston and at San Antonio. Last night they were down 15-0. They were down 22 points at one point, and they come all the way back to win. Statement wins. They've won 9 straight. Durant is on the way back, so the Warriors are looking good. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Windy on the way. We'll talk basketball with Brian Windhorst in just a couple of minutes. And by the way, Bruce Bowen, who I told you texted me, I didn't realize he's here. He's in the building. I texted him, when are you going to be up here? And he texted me back, I'll come by after my Sports Center hit.
I was just going to say, you're happy he's not here to yell at you, but it turns out he is here to yell at you.
Oh, and I'm told now he's booked to come on the show tomorrow, so we'll talk hoops.
And not even yell at you. Well, you didn't even say anything. You didn't even say it.
I would vote for Westbrook.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that complicated.
You're not calling for co-MVPs. Neither am I.
Oh, by the way, Russell Westbrook had 57 points in a triple-double last night.
Yeah.
Let me say that again. He had 57 points in a triple-double last night. And I want to clear up one other stat because people are writing this in. And listen, God bless people for looking this stuff up. And Hembo did preempt this.
He did, yes.
When we told you that in the unlikely event that there are three co-MVPs this year, there have only been 3 previous instances of co-MVPs, twice in the NFL, most recently in 2003, Peyton Manning and Steve McNair, and then once in baseball in the 70s. Hembo actually had already sent me this note. It's worth noting the Associated Press says that Norm Van Brocklin and Joe Schmidt shared the MVP award in 1960. However, it is not widely recognized and isn't even mentioned on Schmidt's Hall of Fame page. So how about Hembo? He saw that reaction coming and preempted
it. What we'd like you to do now, Hembo, is investigate it a little bit and find out why it's not widely recognized and why it's not mentioned on Schmidt's Hall of Fame page.
I agree.
Yeah,
I'd like you to speak to the people who run Joe Schmidt's Hall of Fame page.
There you go.
Call up the admins and find out why that extraordinary accomplishment is being overlooked. A couple of more tweets before we move on to Windy and some of the other stuff here. Drew Diener, this is on the referee again, who many people believe, myself included, it's an opinion, it's not a statement of fact, had a bad day in the North Carolina-Kentucky game. Players have bad days, coaches have bad days, officials have bad days. Basketball is, look, you don't need me to run through the litany of reasons why this may happen. Drew tweets, the ref couldn't have had that bad of a day. He was chosen to ref the Final Four based on his performance. And that is true.
That is very true. That goes into what Kevin said. He said John Higgins did not do a bad job officiating the game. He did a job that UK fans didn't like. He missed nothing. I mean, I don't know.
I don't happen to agree with that.
I don't know if I would go that far, but I understand. When you're on the wrong side in that game, it seemed like every whistle early on was going for North Carolina. But I understand what Kevin is saying.
And here's where the whole thing becomes: do not allow logical, normal, sane, rational people to be overrun by this tiny lunatic fringe. So there's a part of me that wants to say today, well, I don't want to talk about – I don't even want to mention that I thought he did a bad job reffing the game to add fuel to this fire. But no. Don't stifle yourself. It is a perfectly legitimate thing to say that I thought he had a bad day. I thought the game was poorly officiated in the first half, and I thought it was one-sidedly so. Now, Kentucky came back and had a 5-point lead late in that game and every opportunity to win. I don't even think it decided the game. I just think that they had a bad day. There should not be anything wrong with saying that. We are a sports talk show. You can say that. And he is an official. He's a grown man. He understands that. He's going to have days where he's going to get criticized by the fans. That's part of the deal. That's part of the job. And you should not be afraid to say so because this tiny collection of subhuman lunatics are doing things that actually damage the person's life. I mean, between the death threats and posting false, bad reviews on the Facebook page of his other business, you're actually doing damage to a human being's life because you're upset your team lost. I mean, it's disgraceful, and it should not be acknowledged as normal. You know what I mean? Is what I'm saying making sense? Like, if you say to yourself, well, I don't even want to say that he did a poor job officiating the game, it's almost like you're letting these lunatics win because
well, no, you're not.
There's no thread of commonality between that and these
there
people.
Should be no correlation to us saying we didn't think the ref did a good job, and all of a sudden he's getting death threats and bad reviews about the business he owns. That's ridiculous. They are. It's a correct term, lunatic fringe, and it's obviously a tiny percentage. But when they're doing things like this, it's going to create a headline when an official has to go spend 2 hours at a police station talking about death threats he's getting. I mean, talk about losing sight of reality of where we are. It's ridiculous.
Ridiculous. Okay, onwards we go to far more rational topics. The NBA is coming up here on ESPN Radio. We got Damian Lillard and the Blazers. We got James Harden and the Rockets. It's presented by GNC, and the coverage begins tonight, 9:30 Eastern on most of these ESPN radio stations. And joining us now to talk a little basketball, one of our favorites, our man Windy, Brian Windhorst, is back and better than ever. How are you, Windy?
Good morning, guys.
All right, we're holding your feet to the fire here, Windhorst. We're not accepting any of this co-MVP conversation. Kobe said it the other day. Mark Jackson said it. And now Bruce Bowen is yelling and screaming at me, even though I had nothing whatsoever to do with it. You have a vote. Who's the MVP?
I'm probably going to go with James Harden. And I say that with the recognition that Russell Westbrook is having a season that he would be MVP worthy in 95% of the seasons dating back to 1949. What he's doing is incredible, but you look at Harden, and Harden's season is equally incredible. I mean, you know, we freak out because of the double-digit points, rebounds, and assists. That's an incredible statistic. But Harden has some statistics that are just as insane, including the overall number of points that he's generated for the Rockets this year, both in scoring them and assisting them. And the Rockets have been just a fantastic team. And, you know, there was a big accomplishment last night. The Thunder qualified for the playoffs. And if you go back and look at the history of these teams who've lost stars, whether it was the Cavs when LeBron walked, or the Raptors when Bosh, or the Hornets, now Pelicans, with Chris Paul, or the Magic with Dwight Howard, the Magic still haven't been back to the playoffs. They're back in the playoffs a year after Durant walked on them. These are great accomplishments. But right now, I think I'm probably going to give it to Harden because of how fantastic his team has played this whole season.
You know, and I've never had a vote for an MVP in any sport. Can you vote co-MVPs? Can you actually put that on your sheet?
No, and in fact, when I first started this, 12 years ago, Golic, it was like we used paper ballots. Now it's done by Ernst & Young, and it's all, these specialized ballots and encoded and special passwords. It's you're not allowed to do anything out of the ordinary. So no, you can't do the co-MVP.
No, it might wind up Emma Stone if you leave it in the hands of people like that. You never know how that stuff works out. All right, Mike and Wendy. So how about Golden State then? Back-to-back nights. They're at Houston, they're getting blown out, they come back and they win. They're at San Antonio, they're getting blown out, they come back and they win. They're going to get Durant back. So a season filled with a lot of ups and a few little questionable downs. Looks like it's going to end on a very strong note, and they're going to roar into the playoffs.
Yeah, you could statistically make an argument that they're more dominant this year than last year. Now, when you say that, you're like, well, you're out of your mind. They won 73 last year. But right now, they are the number one offensive team and the number one defensive team in the league. No one has done that since the Bulls in 95-96. Not even the Warriors did that last year. And, okay, they're not as dominant as they were last year, but in terms of the stats, they've never been better. And one of the things that's happened since Durant went out is they have really locked down on defense and turned into a defensive monster. If you watched how they defended, okay, they gave up 23 points to them in the first, 7 or 8 minutes last night. After that, they were a defensive demon. And the night before, playing the Rockets, the second-best offensive team in the league, defensive demon. They're smothering the three-pointer. Teams can't get it off. It's amazing. Sometimes injuries are blessings. It's one weird thing about the NBA. Some injuries devastate teams. Some injuries somehow make teams better. And this injury has made the Warriors a better defensive team, and Durant is an excellent defensive player.
So they're sitting there riding high right now as they're playing, and the Cleveland Cavaliers are not. especially defensively. A lot of worry for them. You know Cleveland as well as anybody. Do you have as much worry for the Cavaliers and what's going on right now?
Yeah, I'm headed to the airport now to go to Chicago to watch them play the Bulls tonight, where this is the Cavs' luck right now. They're playing the Bulls, who have won 19 consecutive games at home that are on TNT. It's one of the strangest streaks I've ever seen in my career. I can't explain it. Guess what the game is tonight? So you look at the Cavs, they're 29th in defense since the All-Star break. 30th is the Lakers, who are one of the worst defensive teams of all time. They are essentially 29th of 29 since the Lakers are in a protracted tanking maneuver. Their defensive habits are terrible. They kind of remind me of a high school team, like a good high school team that has more talent than common sense. When they get down in games, they have a habit where Kyrie and LeBron just put their head down and try to outscore the competition. That's been going on all year, and that's the kind of thing really super talented players do before that they learn that as a team, defense in the NBA is how you come back from being behind. So they have bad habits, and then they have different things on their roster. They have some guys who are hurt, like Kyle Korver. Korver, his injury has been devastating to them, very surprisingly, but they haven't been the same team since he got hurt. Then they have guys who are worn down, like I think Tristan Thompson is worn down. I think at times LeBron has been worn down. And then you look at guys like J.R. Smith and Kevin Love, who are a little bit out of shape because they've had injuries. So there's not one magic thing that's happening. There's a whole bunch of different things, and they've been getting blown out regularly, and that hasn't happened to a LeBron team since he was in his first year in the league.
And so who is the legitimate threat to them in the Eastern Conference? Which team do you point to and say that team has a real chance, a very legitimate chance of beating them in a 7-game series?
Well, I think Toronto and Washington are both super talented. Boston, it has a great system, and they play extraordinarily hard. I don't know talent-wise if Boston can do it, because when you get into the postseason, these series, individual talent means so much. And right now, Toronto is sitting pretty. They've won 6 of 7. They've been the number 3 defensive team since the All-Star break, and they're about to get Kyle Lowry back. But here's what I'll say about the Cavs. We could get to mid-May, and they could be down to Washington or Toronto in the second round, and we could say, well, we've seen this coming for months. I guess the end of LeBron's dominance of the East is here. How could you not have seen this coming? But I know the NBA. I've been around long enough, and I can tell you that just as easily I could see when the games slow down and the Cavs' athleticism problems get mitigated, and they get into the game plans of the postseason, and they get into the most dominating, one of the most dominating playoff series players of all time and get him going. They could very easily be back in the finals, and we could all be saying, how do we ever doubt him? I don't know which way it's going to go, but it could very easily go either direction.
Certainly been flip-flopping back and forth, who's playing well, who's not, when Golden State was losing a few games. How about that now for Golden State? Let's remember, the Spurs were undefeated against Golden State and Cleveland going into that game last night. Now the talk is, is Golden State untouchable the way they're playing and getting Durant back? Do you see either the Spurs or Houston or maybe somebody else giving them any kind of competition in the West?
Well, we thought they were untouchable last year, and they ended up having to go to 7 in the conference finals and 7 in the finals, and they lost. I think that getting the number 1 seed is a huge reward in the West this year, because they're not going to have to play, Memphis, who is a challenging team that is a wearing-out team. Not only that, if you're in San Francisco or Oakland, you fly out to Memphis, that's a long trip. Right now, they're looking at either Denver or Portland in the first round, much less travel, which matters to that team. And you're going to be on the opposite side of the bracket. If you're San Antonio and you're going to get to the finals, you're probably going to now have to beat both Houston and Golden State. So I love the positioning that the Warriors have put themselves in. I think they're definitely far and away the favorite. However, we've all been around long enough to say, well, let's just all go home. It's done.
Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Brian Windhorst, our NBA insider extraordinaire, is with us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Wendy, I was reading some interesting quotes from Carmelo Anthony talking about being at peace with his role right now and how the Knicks' rest of their season is going to play out. But to me, it's not so much about the rest of this season as it is next season. Phil Jackson and Jeff Hornacek are talking about running the triangle. That's not the geometric shape that Carmelo Anthony fits into best in the NBA. So my question to you is it your expectation that after all of this, he will relent and he will get himself out of there this offseason?
I hope so. I hope he does it for himself. You know, the Knicks, and I should say that Phil Jackson has done everything but pack Carmelo's bags for him. You know, a couple of years ago when he was a free agent, he challenged him to take less money. He challenged him with, the way he's handled the coaching hires. I don't think Phil's wanted Carmelo there since he got there. I think he wanted him to leave in free agency. And frankly, looking back, I wish Carmelo would have left in free agency. He had some fantastic options that summer, and he didn't. And he stuck with the team. He has given so much to the Knicks and their fans. They haven't been able to do a good job around him. And, he's been so loyal because he wants to play in New York. He's happy in New York. And part of it is selfish. He likes playing there. He wants to play in the big city. But he's earned the right to do that. So, they are, to me, like this whole triangle thing is just them poking the bear, trying to force him to give up his no-trade clause. And if this doesn't work, they'll try something else. Like if I was counseling Carmelo, I would say, as long as Phil's going to be there, he's going to hound you to get out of town. Why don't you just give him what he wants and try to make the last segment of your career productive for you? The problem is, even if he relents, guys, it's really hard to find a trade partner for him. He makes a lot of money. He's not as good of a player as he used to be. And, the Knicks, they're not going to just give him away for free. So it's going to be a challenging situation, but I really think Carmelo should just take the hint and move on because the Knicks are doing everything in their power to force him to get out of there.
He's Brian Windhorst. I agree. I mean, it's tough to watch, and I'm not sure how they've gotten to where they've gotten, but I completely agree with everything you said. All right, Wendy's on his way to watch the Bulls and the Cavs tonight in Chicago, and we'll check in again soon. Thank you, Wendy.
Take care, guys.
That's Brian Windhorst. Mike, if you were Carmelo Anthony, what would you do?
Well, it's so interesting with ego of players as well, because there's a side of, do you want to make it look like they won and got you out? They want you out, and I like how Wendy said, they're hinting. If hinting is using a sledgehammer on a fly, then yeah, okay. Is there a stronger word than hinting? So that's what it comes down to. You have to think about quality of life, how you're going to be in that situation if you stay there and you don't really feel like you're wanted. And then the other side of it is, are you letting them for, quote unquote, win by driving you out, doing exactly what they wanted to do, get you out of that city? Or, do you say, I'm not letting you win. You gave me this deal. You gave me the no trade. I'm good here. You guys deal with what's going on around me. So all depends on the individual and how they want to handle it.
That would be, if you looked up the dictionary definition, however, of cutting off your nose to spite your face, it would be that, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to waste.
Sure it would.
He already has, and it continues. The remaining good years, however many good years Carmelo Anthony has left, years that he has remaining where he can be an upper echelon level NBA player, whatever exactly it is you think he is at this point in his career, he's certainly still a very good player. However many years of that he's got left, 2, 3, whatever it is, it would really be the definition of cutting off your nose to spite your face to say, you know what, Phil, because I don't want you to win this, I'm going to stay here and play with this dreck and play in this triangle. Phil Jackson is going to coach this team from the stands. He is telling them what to run, but he's not running it. So, he's going to coach the team from a seat in the stands that he only attends home games anyway. And Carmelo is going to waste the remaining good years he has in his career in the middle of that ridiculousness.
I think the obvious answer is for him to go, and then you just try and word it and say, I don't want to be where I'm not wanted, however you want to phrase that. But I do think the obvious answer would be go, and it's twofold. One, it's kind of a toxic. It's a toxic situation right now, and he can go somewhere else and have a hell of a lot better chance to win a ring than in New York.
He bought himself this situation.
Right.
If you want to look at it that way, he didn't. When Windy said he had better options or good options, he did, but none of them would have paid him as much money. If for those who are not aware of the history of it, at the time that Carmelo re-signed with the Knicks, it was overwhelmingly the most money he could get was to re-sign with the Knicks rather than going to Chicago, who wanted him, or Houston, who wanted him, or some other circumstance. So he got in. Stephen A., I remember him sitting here. He loves his money. He loves his money. I love my money, too.
Sure.
So does everybody. So there's nothing wrong with that. But the point is that's the position that he winds up in. However, he got the no-trade clause. So he completely runs the situation. He can handpick where he wants to go so long as there are teams that want him. I have to believe he will get out of there this summer.
Yeah, I think when push comes to shove, yes. I do think eventually he will be gone.
I hope so. How often do you hear a reporter say, I hope so for his sake? That's where the Knicks are now. People feel sorry for their superstars.
ADT presents What to Consider When Considering Home Security. An ADT sign is more than a sign. It's a line in the sand. On one side, your family. On the other, an uncertain world.
For over 140 years, more people have chosen ADT to help prevent crime than anyone else. Get ADT starting at just $28.99 a month.
Tested, trusted, proven ADT.
With 36-month contract for licensing and terms and conditions, visit ADT.com.
That Venus Williams accomplishes something that makes her the oldest player ever to do something makes me feel a combination of very old and a reminder of how long we've been doing this show. Because for those of you who've been with us from the very beginning, we played a tennis match against each other years and years ago in New Haven, Connecticut. We called it Braun versus Scrawn.
Yes, we did.
And this would have been like in 2000, I want to say, in 2.
Yeah, I think right in there.
And the Williams sisters had just burst onto the scene, and we met Venus Williams. And I remember my impression of her was how incredibly young she was.
Yeah.
Like she had become so famous already and was such a terrific player and all that. And she's physically so impressive. And yet when you meet her at that time, again, it's now a very long time ago, I was struck by how incredibly young she was. And now here she is. So, again, a combination of how old we are and how long we've been doing this show. She's now the oldest person ever to beat a world number one. It's unbelievable.
Just adding to their legacy of the greatest siblings to ever be involved in sports.
Without competition.
I don't think it's...
I continue to put you and your brother third.
Yeah.
I go the Williams sisters first, the Manning brothers second, the Golic brothers third.
And it's a real big tie.
And by the way, Mike, SportsCenter is indeed brought to you by Dollar Shave Club.
Okay, the smarter choice for getting a fantastic, high-quality shave at an affordable price. And right now, new members are going to get their first month of any DSC razor for $1 with free shipping. After that, it's just a few bucks a month. Get yours at dollarshaveclub.com/Mike.
Okay, so the National Football League has a huge problem, except it isn't actually a problem at all. They're moving a team to Las Vegas, and gambling thus becomes an enormous issue, except it doesn't. While we were having this conversation yesterday, Mike, and I never got a chance to work it in because we got busy with other things, but at one point while we were talking yesterday, I got an email from David Purdom, who wrote the note to me on the in-house email, and he writes, Greeny, I'm one of the gambling writers for ESPN Chalk. And I've been following the debate over sports betting legalization closely for years. You and I were talking about that yesterday. And he said, I want to, well, whatever. He likes the take that we had on it. But then he writes, one of the biggest storylines on the issue at this point is what appears to be a growing divide between ownership and Roger Goodell, who said last night that ownership, quote, strongly opposes legalized sports betting. But here are quotes that indicate otherwise. One AFC owner told Albert Breer, quote, from a gambling standpoint, that's a joke to even say that would be a problem. That was an issue decades ago. Now, sports gambling is going to be legal. We might as well embrace it and become part of the solution rather than fight it. It's in everyone's best interest for it to be above board. And an NFC owner said, the first question, naturally, is going to be about gambling. But any of us can pull our phones out of our pocket and place a bet right now. The concern is not 100% put to bed, but it's relatively put to bed because of technology today. So the point that he's trying to make to me is, despite the commissioner saying what I believe he has to say, the reality is the owners are not only not concerned about it, but moving in the direction, as you and I have long been, of legalizing sports gambling.
We all think it's going to happen, and I know we talk about Roger having to say that, but doesn't Adam Silver believe it should be legalized?
He has said that,
so
yes.
There is a commissioner of a major sport that's saying he believes it should be legalized, and I do as well. It just seems like you just keep avoiding and avoiding and avoiding instead of, as the AFC owner said, meet this thing head on. Let's work through it. Let's see what positives can come out of it. And just get to the point where I think we know we're all going to be. We keep making the correlation with legalizing marijuana. It's happening state by state slowly, and I think a lot of people believe it's going to be in the majority of the states. And, again, sooner rather than later, I can use that term because, Adam Silver used it.
Right.
And we have no idea really what the time frame is.
Delightfully vague.
Sooner or later, there's going to be more states than not that legalize marijuana. I feel very confident in saying that. But, it's kind of there is that fight. There's that stigma. There's that, no, we don't want to bring it here. And then slowly you see the other states do it and what's happening there, the money they may be making, the problems they're working through. And then you keep rolling with it. And I think it'll be the same with gambling. We said the same thing with DraftKings when all of a sudden it's illegal in New York. And what did we say here? Well, it'll be illegal until New York figures out how to get some dollars out of it. And they did. So I do think this will happen. And I do think sooner rather than later is the smart way to go. It's going in that direction. Just go with it and let's work through it all.
All right, Mike and Mike. So there was that. I appreciate David sending that note. Again, he sent it yesterday right in the middle of this conversation, but then we then moved on to other things, and I was never able to get that note in. I thought it was interesting. Here's another thing I thought was very interesting. I get, as we all do, we get these clips of different columns that are sent out all over the place, all over the country. And with baseball season starting, there's a lot of little baseball notes, and I was combing through them. And one little tiny throwaway paragraph said, the Oakland A's have hired Jose Canseco as part of their broadcast team. And I thought to myself, holy smoke. Now, I don't know how closely or how vividly people remember this, but the tipping point of the steroid issue in baseball had nothing to do with Barry Bonds, had nothing to do with Alex Rodriguez, had nothing to do with Mark McGwire or Sammy Sosa. It all started with Canseco.
Right.
He felt he was being blackballed from the sport, and he said, I'm going to get back at everybody. And he wrote a book in which he detailed stuff that had been lurking in the background of people's consciousness and awareness and conversation, but had never been out in the forefront. And I cannot sit here and tell you that every word he wrote in the book proved to be true, but boy, he was a heck of a lot closer to right than most people wanted him to be at the time.
And where was that book referenced? The Mitchell Report? Congress? I mean, that book was referenced in some major, major places. No doubt about it. And Jose Canseco is still says some outlandish things even past that, post that book. And now he's a broadcaster. So here we go. How about this? This is a great note. Steroid-era players that are basically ostracized from the game. I mean, we know steroids in baseball. They want you basically thrown out of the game, your name crossed off the list of ever playing the game. Mark McGwire is a Padres bench coach. Barry Bonds is now, he was with the Marlins last, and now he's with the Giants as an advisor with the Giants. Alex Rodriguez is Fox, broadcasting at Fox.
Major national platform. Major. He's hosted Live with Kelly
Yes.
Ripa. I mean, he has been fully embraced by the world again.
And I think he does a very good job. Oh, by the way, you know who's sitting with him on that desk? Pete Rose.
Correct.
For Fox.
Yeah.
And now Jose Canseco is the A's broadcaster. So all these pariah, get them out of the game, are all back in the game in some capacity, and we'll still see if some of them end up in the Hall of Fame.
It is, well, yeah, and Canseco, you're 100% right. Canseco's not a Hall of Famer.
No. I mean,
but you're right.
Bonds
but Bonds and A-Rod. Bonds and A-Rod. If the word steroid didn't exist, if you wanted to make an argument that Bonds and A-Rod are the two greatest players that ever lived, you could do it and defend it easily.
Bonds would be the next one talked about. Should he be the unanimous choice if steroids were never mentioned? And he wouldn't be because he kind of,
and so would A-Rod. I mean, A-Rod hit 700 home runs, and he was a great defensive shortstop, for crying out loud. I mean, the position of shortstop used to be if you could hit 260 and play the field well, you were an all-star. The guy hit he hit 698 or something like that. He wound up like 1 or 2 home runs short of, I forget exact, 4 home runs short, 696.
Right, four
696 home runs as a shortstop who willingly moved to third base to go play baseball, even though he was a better defensive shortstop than Jeter. But whatever.
But here they are in the game.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million, what color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin. They'll allow it. Congratulations. You're a winner.
Woo!
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
And I hadn't seen these. Did you see the Canseco tweets that Brooksy has?
No, I did not.
I had not even seen these. But Canseco, again, he's become sort of an outlandish character. He tweeted, "Proud to be the newest member of the national sports media. My first proposal is ban Bud Selig from Cooperstown until Rose and McGuire are in. Let's vote." He also tweeted, "I hear the amount of free food the media gets is insane. Worried about media belly, so please make my spreads heavy on the paleo." So he's funny. And a lot of people looked at the inclusion of Selig in the Hall of Fame, which I firmly believe he belongs in the Hall of Fame. But because he was the commissioner during the steroid era, some people look at that and say, should that be a signal that the players from that era should be allowed to get in? Do you see a cause and effect there?
I'm sorry, give me the last part of that again.
What do you think that Selig getting in, having been the commissioner during that era, should have any influence on the players of that era?
No, I think the players, I think it's separated from that. I think it's just when the voters and the writers and the voters are going to just get past this and that stigma and put them in. I got a question for you real quick.
Yeah.
2.5 years over under. Jose Canseco is with a nationally broadcasting somewhere.
Under. He'll do it.
Because right now it's with the A's.
He's good,
and he's gonna talk. He's gonna say things. So how quickly before someone plucks him nationally?
Yes, he's going to be outrageous, and he's going to be crazy, and he's going to be willing to say things, and that's what people are looking for. So yes, I personally don't have any problem with it, and it begets the question I want to ask you. I want to make it Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, half the cost. I believe that the overwhelming majority of the much maligned baseball writers of America, the association members, genuinely want to do the best they can. They want to do the right thing. I know that there is a belief that a lot of them are biased in certain ways against players they didn't like or whatever the case may be, and certainly in some cases I'm sure that's true. But by and large, I think they want to do the right thing. So those who are keeping the steroid guys out because of their personal belief that the steroid guys just shouldn't be in. They were bad for the game. It was bad for the game, and it should not be rewarded. Should those writers view the fact that, as you just read, Mark McGwire is working in baseball. He's employed by a Major League Baseball team. Alex Rodriguez is employed by Fox Broadcasting, by Fox Sports, a major national thing, and actually was an advisor for the Yankees and all that kind of stuff. Fox is a partner of Major League Baseball, probably their biggest financial television partner. Who would you forget? Barry Bonds.
Barry Bonds
is currently in the employ of a Major League Baseball team.
Pete Rose.
And Pete Rose is not, and he's not allowed to be, because he's the only one who's actually on the banned list. Okay. So put him out of it.
Gotcha.
But the steroid guys, should they take that as a signal and take it into account when they make this decision every single year about voting for them? Should that be a factor? Look,
that baseball is accepting them.
Yeah.
Baseball.
The teams themselves have accepted these guys back.
The teams absolutely have accepted these guys back.
If you're a writer, wouldn't you take that as a signal? Baseball is telling me, they're telling me, the people who actually run the sport are telling me there's a place for Mark McGwire here. There's a place for Barry Bonds. There's a place for Jose Canseco. And again, Canseco is not in this Hall of Fame discussion.
Thing, right.
But McGwire, certainly Bonds, and when it comes time, A-Rod. Should the writers take those signals into account?
No, I think they should, but they're human beings. So I think actually some of them will, and I think some of them will say, well, baseball has accepted them back to on the field, in the booth, whatever it is, to be part of the game, but that doesn't mean they need to be accepted and honored as one of the all-time greats of the game because of what they did. I think without question there will be those that will think that as well and still say, That's fine. You can be back in. Well, wasn't that the talk of people were saying about Pete Rose? Just let him back into the game. Don't put him in the Hall of Fame. That was what some people were saying. But let him be part of.
I was saying the opposite. My personal view is the opposite. Put him in the Hall of Fame.
Don't let him back again.
Gambling and the steroid thing are two different things.
They are two different things. So, not to cop out on your answer, but there's so many voters for this,
right,
and they're human beings.
But if you were a voter, would you take it into account?
Yes, I would.
I would too.
I mean, we're biased to this because we would be putting them in now anyway.
Right.
So,
but I would take this as further, evidence of why you should.
The sport I'm trying to keep them out of being honored in is accepted them back into that sport.
Correct.
Yes.
That's a fact.
Yes.
That is a fact. Mark McGwire is currently receiving a paycheck from a Major League Baseball team. So is Barry Bonds. That should be taken into, in my opinion, if you are a voter in this, that should be taken into account. I'm not telling anybody how to vote. You have a vote, you have a conscience, and again, I back in my time as a reporter, I knew a lot of these writers, and I genuinely believe, as maligned as they frequently are, that the overwhelming majority of the baseball writers want to do the right thing and believe they are doing the right thing. And as such, you should be open-minded enough, in my opinion, to look at the totality, the preponderance of the evidence or of the information. And I think a significant part of the information is Major League Baseball is telling you these guys are welcome back.
Well, Buster only just emailed in and to answer your question. And this is what he said. MLB says A-Rod, Bonds, McGwire, Clemens are all members in good standing. The Hall of Fame says the steroid guys are all in good standing. We know this because they put them on the ballot, unlike Pete Rose. The writers, no. For some reason, the writers have positioned themselves up as the moral police. And that's what we keep saying as well, is they're playing the moral cops here.
Yeah.
And Buster's right on every one of those accounts. They've been accepted back into baseball, but the writers have their version of, no, you don't belong in this hall because of this one thing that you've done.
It is important to point out for all the people who want to mix Pete Rose into this discussion, and I understand why you do, but Pete Rose is actually on the banned list. He is actually banned from baseball. His name has never appeared on the ballot.
List, so that's a completely different situation.
The writers don't have the option to vote Pete Rose into the Hall of Fame if they want to. So that is a separate discussion. You're welcome to have it. It's been one of the most common sports talk discussions of all time. But it is actually different because these guys, and Buster just said it exactly right, that's the term. They're members in good standing. Mm-hmm. And, oh, by the way, they're awfully good members in good standing.
Yeah.
If you look at wins above replacement, right, WAR, Alex Rodriguez is the best infielder of any player whose career began in the live ball era. Barry Bonds is the best outfielder of any player whose career began in the live ball era. And Roger Clemens is the best pitcher whose career began in the live ball era. So you have the best infielder, the best outfielder, and the best pitcher of the modern era of Major League Baseball not in the Hall of Fame.
Not in the Hall of Fame. I absolutely think that's going to change. It's just a matter of, will it be, you know what I'm going to say, sooner rather than later.
Right. I don't know. I don't know if it is or
I
not.
think they are.
Really
I absolutely think they're going to end up in the Hall. It's just a matter of when.
I hope they do.
And I think the question you bring up is a good one. And I think that is something to say that look at these guys. These guys that we wanted out of the game are now back in baseball, accepted by baseball and these teams.
They've paid a price, a significant price, reputation and otherwise.